Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, a podcast where we take you down the rabbit hole into the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knudsen.
And I'm Mike Browne. It's time to dim the lights and settle in. Come along with us on this week's adventure. And the adventure this week, we've got a bunch of guests who are going to talk to us about the state of paranormal television, which I am so looking forward to having this discussion.
Yeah, this is, I think, a long time coming. And I mean, everybody that's on the panel today, because this episode is a little bit different. I mean, normally we're taking cases and whatever. But I think where people are getting their information from, as we've been touting for a very long time, is really, really, really important. And I'm really looking forward to having some of these people share their experiences,
right.
Because, I mean, people get their information, or a lot of their information now, from TV. Mm-hmm. And I think
TV,
it's really
YouTube. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's really important that people understand sort of the underbelly of this. And I've worked with some amazing, amazing people over the years, production wise. And it's been wonderful in many areas, but it really cagey in others. So this is going to be a good talk.
I do believe you are correct. So let's get to it.
Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, and a rather different episode today, where normally we're covering a case, or we're delving into some sort of strange phenomenon. But this was a topic that both Mike and I have been wanting to do for quite some time, and it was, of course, spurred ahead by my dear friend Chad Lewis after he made a post about the very same thing on Facebook recently. And I thought, you know what, the new year is, I think, the perfect time to talk about this, especially what's been going on in the news, with people questioning what's going on in the news. We've got weird drones, we've got all sorts of strange things going on. And I think this is the time to talk about the authenticity and the behind the scenes, what people don't know about some of these paranormal shows, where things have gone, how things have gone off in the ditch. And I think we've got the perfect cast and crew today to talk about this. Is, of course, Mike and I, and the amazing Jason Hewlett, who is from BC, all of us Canadians, and then our good friend Greg Bakun and Chad Lewis from the US. So I think we've got a great sort of overall a panel and feeling here of what might be, I think, a really great conversation. So Chad, I'm going to start with you. What was it that spurred you on to post what you did on Facebook? Maybe tell everybody a little bit about what that was and what it was that spurred you on to write about that.
Well, what happened is I saw a image that someone had done of where people get their paranormal information from. And there were two booths. One was paranormal researchers, completely empty, cobwebs, and then a long line of people anxiously waiting to see TV show people. And I run into this, as probably all of you do. Whenever I do a presentation, people ask, what TV shows have you been on? Or do you know this person or that person? And it really, for me, it goes back to my late friend Linda Godfrey told me a story that she was at a conference once and she shared a table with Rosemary and Guiley. And they both, two giants of the field sharing this table. And as people strolled in, they walked right by their table to get to some TV show person's table. And Linda and Rosemary are looking at each other saying, we got all the research right here. What are people doing? And that really struck a chord with me when she said that it just, whether good or bad, that's just the way things were. So I posted it and said, is this good or bad? And I was amazed at how many people had opinions on one side or the other.
Yeah, I know you were waiting for my great big long laundry list of complaints, which I genuinely have. And I'm gonna chip in here just a little bit before I get into Greg and Jason about an incident that I had just this past year where I actually recused myself from a production, and it's the first time I've ever done this. But my approach to television, because I mean I've done over 20 years in parapsychology research, and my work's been presented at the Rhine, and I've got a laundry list of the academic side. I've taught in post-secondary for God knows how long, and my approach to the shows whenever I would get asked to come on and be a so-called expert was that I had the opportunity to introduce to the mainstream the proper scientific academic information. And I felt like if nobody stepped up to do that, then that field would just kind of exist as it was in the ether, its own little conglomerate of people's, ghost hunting and this kind of a thing. And I thought, you know what? I've got the opportunity to step up and actually interject something into this that was educational. And I had an incident where I did that, and my opinion or the factual information that I brought to the table, which was, I always make sure is based in the latest data and the latest parapsychology research and what's in the white papers currently, was scrapped and replaced by somebody's essentially whatever they wanted to hear. It was ghosts, demons, orbs, and craziness. But Greg, I want to turn it over to you here quickly, because I know you have had experiences within these productions as well that have mirrored something similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I was just talking with somebody about this yesterday. I'm out in Wabasha today, and there's a paranormal event that's out here, and there's other teams and stuff. And we were talking about, over time, there's a lot of teams that get approached by production companies who want to see if have them try out to be in a show, and a lot of leading along, obviously, that takes place in these. And I had been working with a production company back in 2018, 2019, the same people locally that would have done Ghost Brothers as well as Tennessee Wraith Chasers, one of their shows, and we went through an awful lot where the person I was with at the time and myself, we were pretty much sure that we were going to be on the Travel Channel. And it's weird. It's kind of an out of body experience now to think about the type of person I was back then versus now. Because I'll be perfectly honest. Back then it was exciting. Back then it was just like, we have this opportunity. We're going to do this. We're going to, unfortunately, visions of grandeur does come up during this a little bit, especially when you're new at it, and, you're listening to what the terms are going to be probably for the show. And you're just like, this isn't great actually, but it's okay because we're going to last and we're going to be great. Then it came to the point. And it's not. I mean, it's just it's that where is that dilemma? Where does that moral dilemma come in? Where they sat us down and say, Travel Channel just doesn't think you guys are scary enough. And I mean, anyone who knows me, then I'm scary. I'm scary in general. But when it came to that, just the idea of like you're pitching a show that isn't about demons. There isn't demons. All this stuff. It was like, okay, so what everyone says is actually true. When you hear so many people who talk about this, and you hear so many people talking about going through the motions of trying to get a show, it always does come down to this, because that was never a thing. And even more scary for us at the time was like I said, we were working with them for about a year. We did sizzle reels, we did all this stuff, and one day I said to the person at the production company, I said, here's some ideas of concepts for the show. And they were surprised. They're like, oh yeah, those could work. Like, there was no even interest in like, what's this show going to be about? What you're going to be doing? And that's really frightening, because it's like, I'm thinking the world of this stuff, and I don't know what they're thinking at all. They kept us in a silo. We didn't know. But once it got to the point of like it's starting to cross the threshold of what I'm willing to do and what I'm willing to put myself out for, that could actually really harm my reputation as a paranormal investigator, is everything that I've been working really hard to do, which in theory got me to this position to begin with, of having someone even consider me. It's just not worth it. And now I'm at the point where if someone came to me tomorrow and be like, "Hey, would you be interested?" I don't think I would. It's not something that that what I said, that I'm a different person than I was now going through it. It's no, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, your story, I think, Greg, has echoed just so many. Jason, I'll let you weigh in on this as well, because you're sitting here, again, from the Canadian perspective also, and I know, and you've had film experiences and stuff like that, and luckily with a lot of good people, yeah, exactly, right? I mean, like, yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of your way and let you weigh in on this too.
Well, it's funny because like Greg, I had a situation that was very similar to yours. Like, I've been doing this for just over 20 years now, and I have like a film and journalism background. So I get like where these shows are coming from. I get it, because they're here to make money. So the truth isn't really important as long as they put something out every week that gives audiences what they want. So I understand that. But you're someone who's a journalist, your credibility is everything, and I think it comes through in the field of paranormal investigations too. If you want to be a serious paranormal investigator, the way you present yourself and kind of your image, for lack of a better word, does really bring a lot to the table. So I was kind of lucky. Like, where I've worked mostly has been in the realm of documentaries, and so I had a web series, and it's in the process of being resurrected, called We Want to Believe, and it is a docu-series, so it's not a paranormal reality show. We went in, we recorded our investigations as they happened, we put episodes together, and if nothing happened, we said why nothing happened. And so it's won some awards, and that worked out really well in our favor. So, but we were being realistic, and it helped that my colleague, Pete Wren, like, he's been a part of TAPS. He knows all, like, the ghost hunters people. He saw what happened, and so he was always been shy about getting involved in anything that was like a TV production. So that's kind of where I came from. But back, it was 2 years ago, I was approached. I'd done a few, like you did, Greg, about, test things, being approached for shows, and it just didn't work out. But I actually had one come up that I actually had signed, like, the NDAs and all the contracts, and it was going to go ahead. And I'm like you, it was like the concept of the show, and I can't talk what it is, but it was BS, in my opinion. But it was exciting to be at a point where, I could actually do this, and this would be kind of neat, and it would actually afford traveling all over North America, which sounded pretty cool. But for whatever reason, it took a while to get going, as these things do. And then kind of the Hollywood writers' strike and actors' strike happened, which delayed this, which should have set something off also in my head. So I was kind of taking that into consideration. But in the interim, I got to work on a couple of Small Town Monsters documentaries. And I think they're among the best documentary producers that are out there, because they're very there's no sensationalism, etc. So that cemented why I liked doing the documentary stuff. So when it finally came time that the show was going to go ahead, like last February, they're like, "We're ready to go. Are you interested?" I was like, "No," because I weighed what doing a show that I thought the concept of was BS would do to my reputation, and I thought too at the same time I'd be a puppet. Like, whatever. Like, same with you, Morgan. I could talk about how I saw the science of paranormal investigation going and the methods and all that, but they would just jettison that and whatever would be the most sensational thing. So, right. And then that would then be transposed on myself if I tried to present myself as a serious investigator afterwards, and it just wasn't worth it. And I'm glad I did, because I'm continuing more on the road of writing books and making documentaries, and I think that's where being in this field, the greatest chance of presenting any accuracy lies.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And and you were mentioning journalism, and I think that's really the crux of a lot of this for myself as well, is that the way I have always seen journalism is that it's a position of integrity. And this was one of the conversations that I had with a number of production companies over the last number of years, is that when you are calling out to people who have had experiences, whether it be, people that, on the professional level, like doctors and nurses, or whether you're, talking about the layman or, whichever. Many of these people, when they're being interviewed, which is usually the type of show that I would try to take, because they would ask, here's the case, can you give us your take on the case? And I always took that very, very seriously, because I thought these are people who have maybe never told anybody about what has happened to them, like ever. Mm-hmm. And they're putting this on the table for the first time in front of an international audience. And I felt like it's my responsibility to give them the most accurate information that I possibly can give them. And this was something that I would say to producers right up front as well, where I said, look, you're not going to get demons and orbs from me. If that's what you want, you need to go find someone else, because you're not going to get that from me. I'm going to give these people the closest explanation that I think I can give based on the interviews that you're giving me to look at. And to me, that's where this really, really goes off the rails, Jason, like what you were saying with this issue of journalism, is because that to me is, if you are presenting this as some sort of a documentary, which these shows usually do, even though many of them are labeled entertainment, if you've got real life stories, people are not thinking that this is entertainment. People are thinking this is a documentary featuring real life stories. So if you're pulling these people on and then having them spin a narrative, this is a very, very dangerous situation, because not only do we see this in our news media nowadays, we're now seeing it branch off into these other areas. So when did you guys start to notice the change in this? Because there did seem to be an evolution where this seemed to get really bad. And Chad, I'll talk to you about this, because I'll start with you, because you've been in this a really long time. Was there a point where you started to see this go off the rails production-wise?
Yes, definitely. And it's been the last few years where I think I did my first show appearance in the early 2000s. And back then, you could talk about a subject for a bit. They'd ask you a question, and you could go on, and they probably cut most of it. But recently, I think the reason why I might get asked back to shows is that I took all my experience of doing early morning radio interviews where the disc jockeys have a 5-second attention span, and applied that to their questions, where I would give them a 5-second crazy answer that I knew they would just cut and throw that in, because now the shows are so spliced. If they had the 5 of us on there, the 6 of us, you'd get a 5-second quote. Someone else would pop in for 5 seconds. And so I think for me, that's been a turning point, that I just kind of give them a 5-second blurb almost, and they love it, which makes the show even worse.
Good to know you're helping out the problem there, Chad.
Well, I think Jason's right that I see it, and I think there's a difference between production companies that are trying to get a show going and are pitching you to do a pilot or a sizzle reel, versus shows that call you that are already on the air and want you to appear.
Sure.
Like, I had a show call me not long ago on a Thursday and say, we're going to be in the such and such town on Saturday. We want you to come in and talk about the history of the town. And I said, I really don't know much about the history. I know some legends, but the actual dates and that I don't know. And they said, well, could you know by Saturday? Could you be an expert by Saturday? And like 24 hours later, and maybe when I was younger, I would have jumped on that and said, yeah, sure. But yeah.
No, Greg, I'll let you add into that as well. Cause I think you've got something there, Chad.
Well, and I do think, I do think too, it's like, probably for a very long time, I was pretty sure that what we were watching wasn't exactly, right, wasn't real or whatever. But at the same time, you kind of hope in some situations, because there's some really good things that happen on screen. But I remember, and Chad, you'll know this hotel. I'm not going to say it. but there was a hotel in Minnesota that had the Dead Files come out too. And a bunch of my friends were asked to take part in the production of it. And there's a psychic medium in town who's she's very gifted, and she's also very vocal. And I guess at the shooting, which took 3 days just of mainly anything without Amy, because it was the Steve stuff and interviewing people, that she cornered one of the producers, and she's just like, you have an opportunity here because this place is legit. You have an opportunity here to present it as factual. And this is can someone actually do this? Can somebody actually just stick to the facts, present it as it really is, without trying to mess around with it, without trying to fabricate anything of it. And I will say that when the episode came out, the place was pretty unrecognizable to me, and I had been investigating there for years. The stories I never heard of, and the person who cornered them, she knows the place very well, and she was also like, where did this stuff come from? I know everything about this place. Where did this come from? And the idea too that I some people don't understand when it comes to these shows is just the overall editing and the time it takes to shoot this stuff. My friend John was out there for the shoot. He was out there for 2 days, I think it was, and he was in the edit. He was in the final edit. He's on there for 3 seconds, and it's just a shot of him saying the chair moved, and that was 2 days of shooting, and that was all it was. And so every time we see him, we're just like, the chair moved, because it just still is still incensed by it. But it's there's something about it where it's just like and Chad, as you said too, it's like the two different types of shows, and the ones that you get asked to take part in are the pilot one, and it's like when they want you to join in and they already have a show, like they just are plotting people in. I don't see what the point, because you don't have personality. You can't be yourself in it anyway.
Is it shows like I don't want to single anybody out, but there's a certain somebody whose first name begins with the last letter of the alphabet, and then his last name is the second letter of the alphabet. Is it success of the shows like that you guys think is driving this kind of assault on reality? The reality of the paranormal, the reality of parapsychology, the actual science. Is that what it is? It's just it's the sensational stuff has been working for X amount of years, as long as that guy's been active anyway, and people before him. Is it just they don't really care?
Jason, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah. I think coming from a journalism background, I mean, especially writing for newspapers, the whole slogan was, if it bleeds, it leads. So the most sensational stuff, is going to get the most play. And I think when you look back when the shows first started, in the early 2000s, when it was just ghost hunters, there's some stuff there that seemed, I think, it was for television, but they're a lot more accurate than what we're seeing now. And I think as there's a proliferation of shows and each one's trying to outdo the next, it just kind of spirals out of control. And then, you have, the Hobbit guy doing his show, talking about stuff, and he's taken it to the whole next level. And you know what? Credit to him. He's a great entertainer, right? He knows what he's doing in terms of making money, but I don't think he gives two bleep word about the truth. He's had a whole episode shot at the Gooding University Inn, which our team travels to every year, and we work with Western Idaho Paranormal, that's where they go there every year, and they make investigations. And if you watch that episode, they've torqued everything up to 11. I mean, it's a very active place. We spent 36 hours there, and it was nonstop the whole time we were there. But they're saying it's all this evil, and there's all these angry spirits, and this is what's going on. And that's just not our experience there. It's active, yes, but it's not like demons coming out of the woodwork and, they're going to murder you. But that's how they almost want you to feel when you watch that episode. So I think, the more these shows are around, the more they have to outdo each other. the more sensational they get. And then they create like the whole demonic thing, which was nothing 5 years ago, but now it's become the buzzword. And they just, so every episode's got to have a demon in it, and Mr. Baggins gets possessed every week because that's what people want to see. And I think that just makes everything worse. And the problem is because even though they have a disclaimer saying this is entertainment purposes, it's presented as a reality show. And like you said, Morgan, it's real cases at real places with real people. So the general audience isn't smart enough to realize that it's BS, and they take it at face value. So I don't know about any of you in the field, but I have people come up to me sometimes asking questions, afraid of that their house has a demon in it, when I'm just like, no, there's the chances of that happening are 1 in a bazillion, and I wouldn't even say it's demonic. It's just an angry ghost or something like that, or something maybe more negative. But that's sort of my 2 bits on it. Sorry about the rambling rant.
No. I think you're dead on, and you've brought up some really, really important points. And the one thing that I want to add on to there, Jason, is the audience's ability to discern which is which and where the line is. Because that to me is the number one problem. If people want to, throw these shows together and say, this is a show for entertainment purposes, go have fun, whatever, air the show, it's a scare, great. That's fun. Everybody needs a horror movie every once in a while. No, I have zero problem with that whatsoever. But that to me is where the issue is here with the media, and we see it, as I say, not only in this, but we see it in the news as well, because my family has a very strong history in the world of broadcast here in Edmonton. And, I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who was working for local media here for, well over 25 years. And that was the one thing that we were talking about, is that he said and this was a news program, we cherry picked our experts until we found somebody who would spout the narrative that we decided was going to be associated with this story. And this is where the danger is, because like you were saying, you used to be able to tune into some of these shows. I'll give the example of Sightings, right? Linda Moulton Howard and Sightings, right?
Great
where
example.
so you could tune into these shows and go, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting some semblance of researched fact that I'm looking at here. There's credible investigators like Lloyd Auerbach and Kerry Gaynor, and people who we look at in the field and go, we know these people know their stuff. And now people that don't realize that there has been a shift in how things have been presented on television are still looking at this information and going, yeah, but this is really well researched. These people must know what they're talking about because this is well researched journalism. It is not. It is not. And that was the one thing that my friend was talking about. He's a producer now and whatever. And he said, we were given a one sheet of what the story was supposed to be from the higher ups, and that's what we went with. So it wasn't like we had people in the field that were looking into this or looking into cases or trying to figure out what the white papers say or anything like that. None of that is happening. And I think that's what people really don't understand, is that it's not like it was 20, 30 years ago in the media. That's just not happening. So I want to sort of carry on that a little bit, is that at some point this shifted, like we were saying, from people maybe that just wanted, I don't know, maybe just wanted some extra cash, they wanted a show to go or whatever, to deliberate ignorance, in my opinion. Like they're literally putting the facts aside in order to spin a narrative, because this is definitely my most recent experience with this. It's not even necessarily the producers. It's higher up than that. Chad, who do you think is driving some of this? Is it the networks? Is it the companies? What is it what's going on here?
I feel part of it is the TV shows, but part is the audience. TV shows can say, do we give the audience what they need or what they want? And what they need is a sightings type show with research and great researchers and tons of academics on there. But what they're giving is what the audience wants, that demonic possession, the jump scares, the every place is going to throw you into a portal to hell when you walk through the front door. And I can't blame the TV's 100% the shows for that, because that's what the audience is soaking up. That's what they're grabbing. But I think we've come to a point where no one's trying to give them the other option to see if that would work. You know, they're not jumping back saying, why don't we do more of a research-based, less drama, and see how that works. They're trying to say, you know, how can we bring psychic pets into the show and see how that flies?
Well, there's been a really recent example of the audience wanting more with this new podcast that just kind of came out of nowhere and knocked Joe Rogan off the top spot in the US and the UK, and it's called the Telepathy Tapes. And it's about nonverbal autistic kids that their parents and these researchers believe are telepathic and have telepathic abilities as a result of being autistic. It's one of their features they're thinking. I mean, there's arguments one way or the other, but it's really fascinating that a show that is trying to do it science-wise, which is what they're doing, even though there are arguments that their science is flawed, that show knocked Joe Rogan off top spot. So there is an audience for it. You know, if we weren't feeding them Bilbo Baggins all the time, if they weren't being fed that, perhaps there is an audience that would pick up on a new show like Sightings or something like that. Maybe Sightings needs a resurrection, to coin a phrase.
Well, that's what I wonder, because I know, one of my things is education through live shows and theater shows and things like that. And because I'm definitely one of those people. Have a background in theater. I've done it for a very long time. And I firmly believe that people need to be having fun and having an emotional experience in order to remember stuff. And you don't have to fake things in order to make that memorable and exciting. You just have to make it something that people are going to remember and that are having fun, instead of, you know, making them read a stack of white papers, which nobody wants to do. I don't even want to do it, and I have to do it. But I do. I definitely think there is an audience, and I wonder if, and Greg, I'll let you weigh in on this as well. I wonder if it's not so much that's what the audience wants, but that's what's available to them right now on the entertainment level. What do you think about that?
I think, I personally don't think the audience cares. I think that the audience, I think they want to be scared. I think they want to believe in that there is something that is dark, and that I think some of them get kind of a kick out of thinking that that's in their house as well. I think that there's something that, to Chad's point, when he's just like, it's the TV production, but it's also the audience. I think this is what the majority of the audience want, because they don't. I think it all comes back from a point of just education, of knowing what paranormal is, what it's all about. And, first, people are watching this as if they're at the Walt Disney World in the Haunted Mansion. That's what they think it is. If we've all done events, I'm sure, and you bring people in, you get those people who are looking at it as if, it's the start of a play, not that there's going to be actually entities interacting with you. And so I think that I personally think that audiences, for the most part, don't really. I think that they'd much rather live in this world of thinking that it's this, darker stuff, or that it's, as portrayed on television, opposed to what we've been working with and what we've done and what we've done. I've certainly seen it where we've met people, and when we met them, they were big fans of those type of shows, and then they fell away from it to want to understand better. And you probably all have had people come up and say, "Yeah, I get it now. I see." But they're not a majority. And I think if we were to go up to people and be like, "Do you know that show X, Y, and Z, that probably 75, 80%, 95% of the stuff is fake there," they're probably not going to be like, "Oh no, I'm not going to watch it." They're just going to be, "Oh, okay." That's what I think, at least.
Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Greg. I think that the audience itself, I mean, the people who I think know it's BS and want the more real stuff, they'll read a book or they'll watch like an older show or something like that. I think majority of the modern audience just wants, like what Greg said, they want to be scared. And so they're going to lap that up. And I think the production companies, 'cause we all know that Hollywood is bankrupt of ideas, but they won't go for any original new idea. It's got to be in something existing. So they will just always go with what works and what people want to watch. They're very rare is it that someone's going to take a chance. I think that's where you need to look to more like with, mainstream movies. You got to go to more of an indie film to get something unique and original than watching the latest Marvel movie, unfortunately.
There was a really successful example of a decent show presented as documentary. Did any of you guys see the Apple TV Enfield Poltergeist series?
Yeah, that was well done.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic, and they did it really. I've lost my train of thought. but they were
good.
So great at what they did. Yeah.
They did. But when I looked at that, because I remember when it came out, I was super excited to, having, read, this house is haunted and all that. So I remember going on to find it, and it wasn't even in the top 10 when it dropped. Like, most shows hit number 1. So I think that it to itself speaks to it, that people probably saw the trailers and they were just like, well, it looks, maybe interesting, but it doesn't look all that scary and looks more like a documentary. I don't want to watch that, which I think that speaks to the problem that here's this well-presented thing that comes out that is what people need to watch, and they're just not jumping onto it. But it is excellent. Like, it's phenomenal.
Which Enfield? Is it the UK or the...
Yeah, the Enfield, the UK. Okay.
They essentially what they did, they had actors that they hired who looked a lot like the folks who were there for the real haunting, for the real poltergeist activity, and they had them lip sync to the tapes that were made at the time. It was so bang on. It was so great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just the fact they could get those tapes, right, which recorded tons of stuff. But then you look at like the second Conjuring movie, like that presents the Warrens as these great heroes in that Enfield case, and they were there maybe one morning and they weren't even allowed in the building, but they made them the same, but based on a true story, and everybody believed it, right? Like, that's the problem.
Yeah, I know. That's the one thing that I've found. Just speaking to colleagues on the academic end that have found this so incredibly frustrating, and this is something that I've passed on to producers and whatnot over the years as well, where I've said, look, you've got. And this was a conversation I had actually not that long ago, where I said, they were basically making up terms and presenting them as scientific terms in regards to the paranormal. And I said, look, there is a name for this. It's not that name. There is a name that has been established throughout the world of academia where this has a specific this phenomenon has a name, and it's listed in papers and whatnot. And they said, well, we don't know. The network didn't like it, and we don't think the audience is going to understand it. And I told them, I said, so in other words, if you were doing a medical show and the network didn't like the word autopsy, would you replace it with a made up term?
They
were like, that's exactly what I said. And they're no, we wouldn't do that. And I said, well, then what is the difference? What is the difference? I said, look, you've got a field in which there are people who have their PhDs, there are people that have their master's degree, there are people that have won multiple academic prizes for this. They teach this in universities. I said, you've got say, for example, like Princeton has the parapsychology lab pair. You've got Cope at Yale. You've got, I said, yet you feel like you can bastardize this field in a way that you don't do with these other fields, which I also found extremely frustrating. And so when this was I guess taken up to the higher ups or whatever, they said, well, we kind of see where you're coming from. What do you mean you kind of see where I'm coming from? Like, this is insane. So I think we have to really take a hard look at exactly how you've got this upper echelon, whether it be in the U.S. or Canada or whatever, of how they're viewing accurate information that they're dealing down the pipeline, because it's not what we think. Greg, yeah, go ahead.
I just got to say, what you just said has so many levels to it that which is almost frightening in a sense, because what we're looking at here is, first of all, when you put it out like that, which, I mean, I've always kind of felt this way, it shows that as far as a lot of mediums are concerned, what I mean, like television mediums are concerned, that there actually really isn't any respect for our field.
Zero.
That there isn't, if to your point, if we start seeing shows where it's, talking about, body cut-ups and not autopsies, they're going to be sued. There's going to be something done that's going to bring effect to it, and it's like, is it down to, like, the researchers and academics? And I'm not suggesting that you all start suing all of the media stuff, but I mean, to what extent though? Because you can't hold it accountable. You can't hold these production companies accountable. But it really comes down to that they're not respecting it, and that there isn't anybody who's holding them responsible. And what I'm going to say is not about everybody, but is about a number of people who are doing these shows, and they are looked at as experts. They come up through the ranks of paranormal, and once they get some success, they kind of adapt themselves. At what stage can we get some of them to actually put their foot down over things, and that's something that is very much needed.
Well, I'll repeat a story here before we kind of go on to the next question that I think bears repeating, because this was something that was told to me by Lizette Coley on an interview we did way back at the beginning of Supernatural Circumstances. And she is, for those who don't know, she is the president of the Parapsychology Foundation out of New York, one of the oldest parapsychology research organizations in the world, and definitely in America. And she was present, as well as another dear friend of mine, Dr. Nancy Zingroni, for 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. And I will never, ever forget this as long as I live. She said, after the towers fell, it was like less than 24 hours is what she has said to me. The Parapsychology Foundation was inundated with phone calls and emails, and not for the reason you think. It was inundated because people who had lost loved ones in the Twin Towers were calling because they were afraid that their loved ones had died a horrible death and were stuck there. Now, this is the level of damage that narrative in and of itself is doing within the public sector. This is like real life consequences. And as we know throughout academic parapsychology, there is no evidence that there is anybody gets stuck, or like we can trace that back to a number of different cultural sources and psychiatry sources, and whatever. I think it was a German psychiatrist at one point who had come up with something similar. And here you've got, which is one of the big popular narratives, which is, this poor belabored soul is stuck in this house and they're wandering around. This is the real life consequence of pushing this narrative, is that now you've got this going on. So anyway, Lizette ended up, she was on the phone with these poor people. And as I say, I will never forget that story as long as I live. So I think we've kind of established that this is an industry problem. I think it is, it's a public problem, but it's also an industry problem. Chad, what can we do to start to shift this? Is there something that people like us, other people that have been in television, what can we do to start changing this dynamic that's going on?
That's a great question. Simply, I don't know if we can. I don't think they care. That I'm sure you've all had it too, where a show asks you to be on an episode and you say, sure, this is what I require. And they move on to someone else who will do it for absolutely nothing, because there's no Brad Pitt in this industry that they don't care. There's no one where like, we've got to have Morgan or, it doesn't work. They're on to, no offense to any of us, but they're on to 12 other people. They don't care. As long as it's a talking head and they can fill it with their script, they're okay. So I don't know. I've talked about this with so many colleagues that we kind of have a chain letter going saying, hey, I just got a call from such and such. If you get a call, this is what I told them I would do it for, so that person kind of has a ballpark of what they might want to do. But other than that, they'll try going to the cheapest, least expensive, saying they don't have a budget, saying they don't have this, that. I mean, we've all dealt with that, where you're in a room where everyone else is getting paid, but for some reason they don't want you to. But again, I just talked with a colleague of mine. I won't mention him, but he's been on a lot of shows, and he just got a call, and they wanted him to do a show in Texas on the Chupacabra, and they said, we'll fly you there, but they weren't going to pay. And they said, well, your flight's kind of a payment. As though, getting on an American airline these days with your 2 square feet of room, flying for 3 days worth of work just for the flight, like, great. So he turned that down. But to your question, Morgan, I think it's a sincere question and a great question. I just don't know that we can do anything. I'm down to giving 5-second radio spurts for them. So I'm probably the worst person to ask about that.
Well, I think, I know in Canada, at least, I've had a better experience with being paid, thank God. And I don't do anything unless there's a contract with a number on it. But I don't know. I mean, I do think that there has to be a way to bring some semblance of accountability. I really do. I mean, there's other ways that other fields, not parapsychology, but other fields have done it. Greg, you talked about that a little bit with, if you tried this in the medical profession, eventually, something's going to happen. I really think that there is something somewhere that's, and I don't pretend to have any of the answers. I really don't. I mean, I just make my statements clear up front with these people as if you want me, this is what you're going to get. If you don't want that, then you need to call somebody else. I don't know. Greg, Jason, do you guys want to add to that?
I guess the way that I've been handling it, because it's you see it with the conventions, you see it with everything else, is I kind of retreat into myself. When I'm doing my radio show and the way that I market it, everything is from me. So I feel like if I'm not going to be able to change out there, and and I now look at that as a different field than what I'm in. When I'm in, I have complete control to have the people on the show that I want, to have the people on the show that I know can have good conversations with, and that aren't going to be, I'm not looking for people who are salacious or surreal or anything. I want people who have their experiences, what they've written about. So I guess, long story short, I think the only thing I can do is kind of my own continuation of my own sort of grassroots sort of way of my brand of paranormal, I guess, if you will. That this is me, and I know that I'm not in it to be famous. I'm not, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be, anywhere near some of those other folks as term of fame or anything, but I'll know that the people who do pay attention to what I'm saying and the guests that I bring on, I know that they're going to be the people who at least saw, and I'm not even going to call it alternative, but it's just a different point of view of all things paranormal. So at least I feel good with that, at least.
Jason, how about
I
you?
agree 100%, Greg. That's sort of what I've done too, is like just kind of make sure that my name, whatever it's worth, is like people at least know what they're going to get. Like, and if I am going to work with anyone else, it's the same with you, Morgan. I kind of state this is how I operate, take it or leave it. And most of the time, I won't even work with anyone who I don't think fits the same values as me. It's just better that way. Would it be cool to be on a big show and like just even do the 5-second soundbite? Absolutely. I think that'd be great. But I just, and I'd probably say yes if I was asked to, just be if it was something that was, I think, a topic that I was into and interested in and could speak clearly about. But otherwise, I just sort of just stick to my own little realm of the paranormal. And I think if more people, as long as there's enough people doing that, the field will have its credibility to some degree.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the approach that I've always taken ever since Steph and I first started NGD Seeker. I don't know how long ago, 20 odd years ago now. And I mean, the two of us, we kind of always had two rules, which was if it comes before the friendship, that was the day we quit. And then the second rule was have integrity about the subject. And when we started very early on, it was 7 years of research and study and working out. I mean, most people know we have the Teaching the Living program, which we've had in courses all over the place. But it was over 7 years before we even made a move to present it at all. It was one of those things we did very carefully, and at the time, the only thing that was actually out in regards to ghost shows was Most Haunted. And it was still in the UK. It was just still a UK thing. You had to download the episodes if you wanted to get in Canada. So I mean, it was very, very, very early on. I mean, this was early 2000s, 2001, and I think maybe that's what this whole thing comes back to. And I mean, Mike, here, you and I, we've basically have the same mandate with supernatural circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why, it does well and maybe isn't, this crazy sensational thing that, many of the other shows that are talking about horror stories and things like that.
Some people would love it if we did that, but we keep forging forth with what we do. We've had some feedback on our show that why don't you spice things up a little bit? And it's like, maybe that's not what we're about. We're not about spicy. There's enough spicy out there. We'd like people to have like a logical conversation about these interesting things.
And I think at the end of the day, it kind of is about being able to lay your head down on the pillow at night and be proud of what you stand for and what you do. And I think that's one of the things that, I mean, it's long gone in television in many areas. I mean, you just have to, wander into the Hollywood and La La Land, to figure that out. But I think there's this, there's an integrity, I think, that good people can bring back to the field. And I think it's salvageable. It just my 2 cents on the deal, and I think through things as to what we're doing, Greg, your show, Jason, what you're doing with your books and TV stuff, and if Chad, all the books you've put out. I mean, you've put out more books than a lot of us combined on this stuff, and I really do think that there is a shift in the public eye that is happening, and I've observed this sort of through the lens of some of these production conferences, where people will go down there and you figure out what's hot on the market and what's not hot on the market and whatever. And interestingly enough, ghost hunting shows are barreling, like they're bottoming out in the market. People aren't watching them. And well, why is that? Well, I think people are kind of I think people are getting a clue. That's just my 2 cents. I could be horribly wrong. I could be horribly optimistic here and be horribly wrong about this, but
Nope.
Yeah, I think people. I really do believe. I think people are getting a clue. So, but anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for having this conversation today. I think this is the start of a probably a bigger one, and one we'll have again. Chad, I want to start with you. Where can people find you? What do you have out? What's coming up? Give them the goods.
Sure, just go to the weirdest place you can think of, and you'll probably find me there.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, simple, clean.
He's not wrong.
We'll do some links to you, Chad, for sure.
ChadLewisResearch.com. Everybody go get his books. Greg, give your spiel.
Sure. I do a nightly radio show out of Minneapolis called GhostBox Radio on AM 950, and it's podcasted on Spotify and all the other places. So Morgan has been on a couple of times, and haven't had Mike on yet, and I think I want Jason on. Chad just needs to respond to me about if he ever wants to come back on. But I'm glad he responds to you, Morgan. That's something at least. So if you can't humiliate someone publicly, then why bother, right?
Why are we here, right?
And Chad's like, I'm not humiliated. I just don't want to be in your damn show.
I've got 5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean,
5-second clips. I can give you those all day.
My show's a little bit longer than 5 seconds, but we can make it work. I can slow down that audio. So,
Jason, what about you?
With the Canadian Paranormal Society, so you can find our page on Facebook, and we have a website, and some books I've written, you can find them on Amazon or through Small Town Monsters. And I'm putting together a new podcast coming up, and I'd like to invite all of you to join me on it once it launches later in the spring. Deal. But I'll reveal more of that on my page as I get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever we can do to support it. And I think, just to everybody listening, I think this is just why did we do this? It's a byware to everybody out there to just remember to critically think through what you're hearing. And, critical thinking is a skill that's kind of gone by the wayside, especially as soon as people hear it off of a television or radio, right? And I think it's a byware to understand, from people here, 5 people here who have been in this on both sides of the industry for a very, very long time, to understand where some of this is coming from, what the attitudes are, so that you guys can make informed decisions. This isn't about bashing anybody one way or the other. It's about getting you guys to be able to make an informed decision about what you're hearing and where you're getting the information from. If you want some very solid information about parapsychology, you can go to the Psi Encyclopedia online, and we're going to put the link to that in the show notes. The Psi Encyclopedia is probably one of the best places to go for absolute no holds barred information from the best of the best for a lot of this stuff. Another great link is the Windbridge Research Institute. The very dear friend of mine, Mark Bakutzi, and Dr. Julie Bichel. They are probably one of the leading research organizations for mediumship and information in that regard. So if you're interested in that, they've got free downloadable information. These guys are the top of their field. And then, of course, there's the Society of Psychical Research. And if you're interested in courses, there's, of course, the Rhine, RHINE. And the Rhine offers courses, and they're coming up with some brand new courses actually here for the new year. Can't recommend them enough. Great places to go. So we're going to include all those in the show notes. And thank you guys all again. This has been a great conversation, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty, so we did have a great talk. We did. Surprise, surprise.
As always.
Yeah.
As always. Yeah, and it really brought up for me, I don't know, just a lot of a lot more questions. I think this is definitely not going to be the last panel we have on this topic. It's one of those things that's really ever expanding, and the more people you talk to, the more insight I think that we can get, and maybe inspiration on how we can begin to reshape things.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and I think this kind of puts the ball in our court, if you know what I mean. Like, okay, so we're seeing that there's a problem, rather than just talk about it. And I don't want to be seen as somebody who just talks and complains about things that are not okay with me. What can you and I, as people who believe in what we do, what is it that we can do moving forward? Because talking to those guys about this specific topic, it just kept ringing in my head. What can we do? What can we do to take this back to? And I think we are doing it in a way. We are really, maybe we're not getting the attention we would like, but at the same time, it's okay to be that one voice crying in the darkness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think as much of the opinion that Chad was giving, I agree with. The fact that he was saying, I don't think we can really change this. This is all on the audience. I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, I disagree.
I don't agree with that. I think from what I've experienced is that people are looking for a change. And I think when that information is not provided, or they're not aware of it, and you've got media conglomerates that are the ones with all the money, that can push all the advertising, that can monopolize what people are seeing on TV, it's very hard for people like you and I, or other people that maybe have a different take on things or have different information, to get over and above that. And I think it's going to be reliant on not only what we do, but also on all our amazing audience members right now that are out there listening to us, is that when you hear information that you think is worthy and valid, make sure you're sharing it. Make sure you're getting out there and putting it out there, because it's not getting found, I think, in the way that many people think it might be.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep. I think, honestly, if the right people hear us, if the right people get a bug in their ear about this, it'll blow up. Like, that's kind of the way that I've seen it. I mean, that's what happened with Dark Poutine. That's what happened with that show, that other show that I do. And right now it's top 0.5% of podcasts in the world, which is like, that's pretty good. I'm proud of that. But I would like this to be there too. This is in, the top 2%, which is, interesting, because there's not a lot happening for it. So that just shows you how many podcasts there are out there, and how many aren't doing so well, So if you listen to this show, please tell your friends about it. Talk about it, and talk about what we do. Because we don't just tell a ghost story. We're trying to dig into this and figure out what this all means. It's more, honestly, I feel like our show is in a way more spiritual than paranormal.
Absolutely. I think it's about consciousness and the journey of it. And we actually got a wonderful email recently, and I'm going to just bring up her name and just give her a shout out, because it was a really wonderful email. A lady by the name of Lacey, and I haven't been able to get back to her yet, but we got an incredible email from her, and talking about her journey in this experience, and asking big questions. And
Great.
She's been getting everybody's books, and it was such a wonderful email to read. And we get these emails from people just like Lacey. Hi, Lacey. And it's inspiring for me, because I think there's so many people out there that are just soaking this in, and it's so rewarding just to be on the journey with them. So I think, like you were saying, that just the more that that people can share this out and make this something that is a little bit more mainstream, I really believe, like you, that there's going to be the right ear to this, and things are going to shift, and I think it's going to happen dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Me too. I mean, it's just this is the way my life goes. It really is. It's just like, just forge forth, and however it's supposed to happen is how it will happen, and it will always be good. And it will always be better than I thought it was going to be, which is strange. I mean, I just went through probably one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, watching my father die, being in the room while my father passed away. However, that experience was one of the most rewarding and educational experiences I think I have ever had in my lifetime, and I am so grateful for it already. You know, like, even though it was hard and I feel sad and I feel like my dad is not physically with me anymore, I have learned so much since then. So whatever situation I go into, I am always, it's kind of why the person I am, I'm always looking for what there is to learn, what there is to get to take away from it, that can help me to make my life better and move forward in a better way. Because there's always an opportunity for that every single time. And I'm talking about the most horrible things that have happened to me every single time.
And I've follow that up with the exact same thing, where the universe wastes nothing, and it wastes no experience. And I always remember there was a wonderful inspirational speaker that I used to follow, and he's since passed away. But he had said that, and he passed away because he ended up with a head injury.
Who was it?
And his name escapes me. I will get back to you. I can't remember his name. But he was wonderful, and he ended up with head injury. And when he was laying in the hospital, he said, "Don't worry, this is happening for me.
Yeah,
not to me. This is happening for me." And I think that message, even in that profound circumstance, because he did not live much longer after that, due to the injury, but the fact that he was still in that headspace at that point in time, and I mean, not everybody can do that, obviously. I mean, that's a pretty advanced state of being, I think, at that point. But there's so much truth to that, is that the universe wastes nothing. You're experiencing something that you are going to take with you, and there's something in there. There's a diamond in there that you don't know what it is right away. Yeah.
And I will have people yell at me about it. Well, how does like the death of a child, or how does like a horrible disaster, there is something there for me spiritually in everything that I have been through. Everything. Whether I choose to see it or not is a different ball of wax, you know, like, it's about how you perceive it and what you take away from it. Every opportunity, like you say, the universe wastes nothing. And I do believe that the universe, whatever it is, loves us. I really do.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. I feel it when we do these shows, and every episode when we talk like this and we end. And, you know, as frustrating as it has been to get some of this information out sometimes because of what we just talked about on the show with the crew here.
We're doing the work, Morgan. As David Lynch said, just do the work. Do the work, and that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing, and we're just encouraging everybody else to do it too. And we're so thankful for everybody out there that is doing it with us, because we couldn't be doing it without you guys. And there's a reason why we're in, you know, the top percentage of podcasts, because you guys are doing the work, and it's amazing. So I couldn't be more grateful, and I couldn't be more grateful for this discussion today. It was absolutely fantastic.
Agreed. So thank you for joining us on this interesting expedition, dear listeners.
And remember, there's no line between the natural and the supernatural. All is consciousness. Until next time, there is no line. What line are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Stay curious, friends.
Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker Paranormal Research and Teachings and Good Egg Studios. This podcast is part of the Curious Cast podcast network. Theme music by Corey Johnson of Catalyst Records in Edmonton, Alberta. You can learn more about Morgan Knudsen at entityseeker.ca and learn more about me, Mike Browne, and listen to my show, Dark Poutine, at darkpoutine.com. Feel free to email the show at supernaturalcircumstances@gmail.com.